I have been working on this Tamiya Panzer III model, and it came with 10 of these spikes. And the instructions showed that they should be placed kind of randomly inside the holes on the spare road wheels mounted on top of the chassis, as I have placed those two in the two holes there. But they need to be painted first. And I went online and I really couldn't find any information on what color they should be. So what I'm going to do is paint them the same color as the chassis of the tank, kind of this yellowish green color. But I'm going to want to chip them up and put some rust on them. And so all of these paints will wind up being used to paint these 10 tiny little spikes, less than an inch across. I'm going to start off by putting a primer coat of Hull Red. That will be followed by a coat of this Citadel Iron Breaker metallic type paint. Then I'm going to coat each of the spikes with a little bit of hairspray, just using a Q-tip swab. Then I'm going to paint the spikes the yellowish green color. Then I can, and after all that dries a little bit, I'll chip up each of the spikes. When I chip them up, it should expose some of the red, Hull Red there, but also it should expose some of the silver metallic paint as well. After I finish chipping up the spikes, I'm going to use these 5 different types of rust paints and washes to give it the rust effects, and a little bit of this Panaline accent color, probably on the very top of the spike, just to give it a little bit of a shadow and shading. Then I'm going to use a tiny bit of this pigment here, kind of a brown and then a kind of a light yellow pigments there, to kind of add a dusty look to each of those 10 spikes. So let me get busy painting the spikes, as I said I was going to do, and I'll be right back. I have finished painting the 10 spikes in the manner that I said I was going to paint them, and they came out very well. I'm going to zoom in on the ones that are stuck in the spare road wheel on the back fender. And if you take a look at each of the spikes, you can see that at one time it appears they were painted the same color as the tank, that greenish yellow color. But they've been pounded into the ground and thrown around and stuck in holes and stuff like they are now, that they've become scraped up. And the tops of them have been pounded enough that it started to expose, you know, the shiny kind of bare metal that's underneath there. But you can also see, especially at the bottom of the stakes, where they've been pounded into the ground, where the red primer is showing as well. The rust areas, I'll come over to these ones here. The rust areas on there, again, were brought about by using all 5 of those different rust shades. And if you just use one of those rust colors, it won't really look very realistic. It'll just kind of look like you just painted some kind of a, orangey color on there. It takes layering those different shades of rust, including kind of almost like a black rust on there, to give the effect that you can see here. And then I took that pigment and took a bristle brush with that dusty pigment there and just wiped it into, all the little crevices and cracks on the spikes to give it that kind of dirty appearance, like they've just come out of the ground and they still have, some dried dirt stuck on the spikes. Very, I think, very kind of realistic looking. If you've ever dealt with very old tent spikes, you know, these very large ones like this, I think it really does mirror kind of what they look like after about 10 years or so of use. So, very happy with that attempt to paint these very tiny pieces of the model. Again, I couldn't find any other advice on YouTube or anywhere else on how to paint those small spikes, so hopefully this will help you if you build this Tamiya Panzer III model.